Interview of a Vampire's AMC's attempt at adapting the long-running and beloved book series by Anne Rice, and stars Jacob Anderson as Louis, a young man turned immortal vampire who meets up with an old journalist years since their first meeting in the 1980s. Because of an incomplete set of cassette tapes and the man's fleeting health, he decides to create a brand new interview session with Louis and learn all that can be told about his life when he was a human and when he was a vampire. He begins in New Orleans in 1910, where he works as a manager for a prostitution business in the red light district. While at a nightclub, he comes across a beautiful blonde man by the name of Lestat, played by Sam Reed, who, after a few strange things with him happen, reveals himself to be a vampire, but Louis doesn't quite understand what any of that means. All he knows is that Lestat can sort of read his mind or talk to him via telepathy, and even stop time in some ways. Much later, a day after his sister's wedding, tragedy strikes when Louis' younger brother kills himself while the two talk on the roof of their house during a sunset. After this, his mother blames him for the tragedy, and things don't go too well emotionally for Louis. So he decides to leave his brother's wake, go to a church, and confess his sins to a priest. While there, Lestat storms in and kills the two priests and offers Louis a chance at immortality and an escape from the shame of his life currently. He bites his neck and lets him drink his own blood, and soon Louis becomes a vampire, and that's just only the beginning of his new life. Already with this first episode, I think it did a really good job at its first impression with me. I have never read the books before, so I was coming into this somewhat fresh. All I've heard about the books are, of course, things people have mentioned, like how, of course, it's about vampires, but it's also, a love story about Louis and Lestat. It's kind of one of the first big major book series starring gay characters, and I think that's pretty interesting. I think that's neat. So far, all we have of that is, of course, the end where Lestat sort of confesses a sort of love he has for Louis, but also a encounter the two have during the night, during one scene where they're with some woman, I think a prostitute, and they sort of have sex. The woman passes out for a bit, and Louis and Lestat sort of kiss a bit, and it's clear that there's something that Louis has deep inside that he didn't know he had until then, which he mentions to the interviewer in between that scene. But so far, I think it's done decently well. But of course, there's more to see with the show, and I'm also not an expert in stuff involving gay people because I myself am not homosexual. I don't really have many well-known friends who are gay or even lesbian, so I am not at all, an expert in this field. What I do know is that, these books are supposed to be very, very intriguing, very dramatic, but also very bloody and sexual. So far in this first episode, they kind of get that done to a T, but again, I've never read the book, so I wouldn't know exactly how sexual or violent it is, but I felt it was slightly weird that they don't really show actual nudity. During the scene I mentioned earlier, with Lestat, Louis, and this one lady, she takes her shirt off and everything, but even though, she's exposed in the chest area, they don't really show her nipples. And with wide shots, I could sort of see that what seemed like the editors or VFX artists, digitally removing her nipples in a sort of way. It's a weird thing to mention, but I just wanted to mention it because it's just slightly weird. But all of the sex stuff so far is very, I guess, subtle, slightly subtle. Again, I've never read the book, so I wouldn't know how accurate this would be. But, at least they're not trying to be hypocritical by showing all of this, female nudity, all of this stuff that the guys really want, but not showing anything nudity-wise with two dudes. So at least there's not really that hypocrisy that I can see. In terms of violence, so far they've got that pretty down to a T. Plenty of blood-sucking. Well, of course it's a vampire story, so of course there's blood-sucking. There is one gory part at the end of the episode that literally made me audibly go, whoa. And that was the church scene where Lestat's killing the priest. There's another priest who, walks in on this sort of killing, and he tries to run away, but Lestat, uses his powers to slow down time a bit, catches up with the priest, closes the gates that sort of double as another door to lock, with his, I guess, telekinesis of some sort, and he literally punches a hole through his head, and that was just insane. I didn't think I'd ever see anything like that in a vampire story, but you got me. They got me. And it was pretty good looking gore too. I don't know if it was actually practical or if it was just really good CGI. All of the effects that they have in this one episode are pretty good, and I'm happy they were able to get all this looking good so far. Can't wait to see how it all looks, how everything will look, because I'm sure there'll be a lot more vampire action in the future. So far the acting was really good. Some great performances from pretty much all of the actors. Not one really over the top or underplayed performance that I could see at all, and I'm happy for that. Can't wait to see just how much the acting will peak in the series, and I'm sure there will be an emotional threshold by the end with this sort of story. So I cannot wait to see it. I'm going to give Interview with a Vampire Episode 1 an 8 out of 10. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you stay tuned for more Interview with a Vampire content. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I wish you all a good day and night. Goodbye.